Whether the view is from up above or down below. 4 days in, the queues are vast and the people in them fed up.
I've been travelling around the whole of Milton Keynes for the last 2 days trying to get enough fuel so I can get home. I've had to miss today off work and I'm going to have to miss tomorrow as well if I can't top up.
There you go, what can you do? Got to sit in the queue, got to get the petrol, got to get somewhere.
And where there aren't queues, there's this. The crisis now is well past the point of annoyance and into the stage of actual impact. Work and money lost, like for Todd, who should be fitting fireplaces today.
We literally rely on that money to survive. You know, we can't walk to work and that be it. Without petrol, diesel, we're out. We have no income. So if this goes on for months, God knows what we'll do.
This is a shortage of HGV drivers to transport the fuel, not a shortage of the actual fuel. Last night, the government temporarily scrapped competition laws, allowing fuel firms to share information more easily to ease disruption. Today, they called in the army.
We are bringing MOD trainers in to accelerate some of the HGV training. To clear a backlog of people who want to carry out those tests. So there's definitely a role there for the MOD, and we're doing that. In terms of other things, we've no plans at the moment to bring in the army to actually do driving, but we always have a civil contingencies section within the army that's always on standby should they be needed, but we don't judge that's necessary at the moment.
That's not the only measure. 5,000 visas will be issued for foreign drivers, though they will expire on Christmas Eve. The government will fund training of 4,000 new British drivers, and the government will send a letter to the 1 million people who hold an HGV licence, encouraging them back into the saddle.
So you're going to back down here in a minute? Marvellous.
Rob is about 30 drivers short right now, 25 of whom were from the EU. They went home at the end of last year and never came back. So the question, given there is now a shortage of drivers in Europe too, do Rob's truckers want to return?
We're getting contacts every day. Just show you scrolling through my texts.
And what
you can see these all saying, how do we get a visa? How do we get a visa? What have we got to do to get back? When can we get back? Is there a job there still? Please don't let my job go. All that sort of stuff. And it's
there is demand there. There is people wanting to come back.
Without a shadow of a doubt.
Last year, an estimated 25,000 drivers returned to the EU. The UK is now 100,000 drivers short. The government's measures so far, Rob isn't convinced.
Was that problem solved? 5,000 extra visas?
Job done, isn't it? No, absolutely not. Unfortunately, the numbers that we're talking about, obviously not for our company, but overall is between 20 and 25,000. So to issue 5,000 visas is really not going to help a great deal. Step in the right direction, yes. Solution, absolutely not.
The fundamentals, say industry and government, effectively haven't changed in 2 weeks. Same supply of fuel, same number of drivers, albeit that number is far too low. What's changed is, well, human nature and fear and panic. Once people know there's a problem, it snowballs. The hope, say the major petrol retailers, is that this isn't like panic buying loo roll. Once you've filled your car up, it's full. So all this should they say, ease off in the next couple of days.
The short-term crisis could soon be over then. As for the wider crisis, this should be a wake-up call, say some.
If we want people to drive lorries, we've got to invest in their salaries and their pay and their conditions. And that's a simple fact of life.
As to how we got here, though, the factors vary.
Running around blaming the idea of Brexit is very shallow. It's been here for a long time. The warning signs have been on the wall.
Well, Brexit has definitely contributed to the issue. But on top of that, we've got 40,000 HGV driving tests that didn't happen last year. That's nobody's fault. That's because of COVID.
Whatever the cause, ministers will be nervous. Come an election, people might not remember the nuance and precise reasons many pumps ran dry, but these queues will be hard to forget.
Paul McNamara reporting. Well, from failing energy companies and soaring gas prices to these acute HGV driver shortages, is there something fundamentally wrong with the UK economy? And is there a way out of it? Our economics correspondent, Helia Ibrahimi, is in Brighton. Helia.
Well, Andrew Bailey, the Governor of the Bank of England, today gave a speech again highlighting the wider problems for the economy caused by these very high-profile bottlenecks, which are basically choking off economic activity in the midst of a recovery. And the question, Matt, is how long and how deep is this crisis going to be? When I spoke to oil and gas companies earlier today, they wanted to make desperately clear that the problem wasn't with them. This isn't a petrol shortage. It's much as Paul was saying about sentiment, about that kind of attitude amplifying or panic amplifying a real logistics failure. But if you're at a gas station and you can't fill up your car, then it's all about nuance. It doesn't matter to you where the petrol station is. And a lot of those same companies are very frustrated about the crisis that's happening in gas. They say that underlines the problem that they've had with government's attitudes to the North Sea, and that they haven't been realistic, regulators and the government, about traditional energy sources and what's needed in the UK. Of course, all of this will come back to consumers. Today, there was a very good report from analysts who were totting up what the cost will be for consumers of all these energy companies failing, and to change those 1.5 million customers who have been forced to move to new providers. It's now expected to cost about £826 million collectively, and we still don't know if that's going to be all of it.
Eye-watering stuff. Helia, thanks very much indeed. Well, not everyone queuing outside petrol stations has been panic buying. Doctors are warning that patients could be affected if medical staff can't get to work. Self-employed people say that they rely on fuel to travel to their jobs, and forecourt workers say they've been so flat out they've hardly had any time to draw breath, while some petrol stations have been relatively quiet. Our North of England correspondent Claire Fallon is in Bradford. Claire.
Well, flat out is certainly how it is here this evening. This petrol station has become one of the go-to petrol stations in this area through the course of the day, as word has spread that they have some fuel, albeit not at every pump, and no diesel. But you can see the problems that it's causing. I've got queues stretching down that way. I can see queues stretching up that way to the top of the road. It is gridlock here. Not all the cars are going into the petrol station, but a fair few of them are. And I know that there will be people in some areas thinking, what's the big deal? My petrol station is absolutely fine. But it's not the case everywhere. It's really patchy. And so in places like this, it's been a day of queuing, frustration, and that kind of anxious feeling that you get in your stomach when your gauge is on empty and you don't know how far you're going to get on fumes. Let me show you some pictures from Bolton earlier today. It shows you how things can change really, really quickly, even in one area, because there were a couple of hours when it was absolute gridlock as word spread. They had some fuel. People not panic buying, people just running out and needing to get some. Here's what they had to say to us.
For the past 3 days now, I've been running on mostly red, but now I have only 0 miles left. So I have to get petrol here or I'm out of it.
And I guess you need to be able to travel for your job?
Yes.
What do you guys do?
Students were on placement, clinical placements at Royal Bolton Hospital.
How many petrol stations have you been to?
Been to about 3 on Manchester Road, and none of them, they're all like queuing all the way out down the road.
How much fuel you got?
3/4 of a tank.
3/4 of a tank?
Yes, but my manager's told me to fill it up again.
Well, the hope is that now enough people have full tanks, things will start to ease. That is not much help for the people stuck in traffic outside a petrol station this evening, though.
Claire, thanks very much. Well, of course, the fuel crisis began with a shortage of hauliers caused in part by pandemic disruption, but Brexit also played a part. Stuart Ring is chairman of the Transport Association, which represents 60 haulage companies across the UK, and he joins me now. Stuart, I know you don't represent fuel tanker drivers, but are your drivers OK getting fuel?
Yes, for the last couple of days with all this panic on the news, we haven't had that many issues because our trucks are going to the truck pumps at the petrol stations. The car drivers aren't blocking those, so we are getting fuel and we're getting going again.
But how short of drivers are the haulage companies that you represent?
Oh, easily 10% across us all, which is over 1,000 drivers for sure.
And what's the reason for that?
Like we've been talking about, all your previous reports, COVID, bit of Brexit, people put on furlough, then people not being interested in coming back to driving again. There's been quite a few things to bring it all together, but it's been historical for many years. It's not just the last 12 months we've been struggling with drivers. As a whole, my own company, 26 years now, we've been struggling for drivers for a very long time.
But can't you just pay them more and attract people to it? Surely that would do the trick.
Sounds easy. They've had 2 pay rises this year already, but we're still losing drivers now. We're losing drivers leading up to Christmas to go and work on agencies that are offering them double what we're paying, and we're losing them. So the guys with the biggest, deepest pockets are going to get the drivers mainly leading up to Christmas, but it won't help the rest of us.
So come back to Christmas in a minute, but roughly what are your drivers being offered by rivals per year, annual salary?
Oh, well, first and second, 48,000 to 50,000, 5 days a week or 5 nights a week, no nights away, no overtime, no weekend grief, spend more time with your family. So you're now 48, 50,000 pounds a year. So
you mentioned Christmas. What is the knock-on effect then? What are you looking at now in terms of the retailers that your drivers service and send supplies to?
Well, we've mentioned before that we're not now bringing as much product back to the Southwest as we normally do. We're coming back empty to get back for the next day's work. Our customers are paying us for this to bring the vehicles back to keep the resources from the Southwest. So it's what we're doing in our area, and it must apply to countries, to hauliers all over the country. So there's less goods being moved because we're not moving as much as we want to because of the situation with the drivers.
So what does the government need to do to ensure that you're not going to see increasingly empty shelves up till Christmas?
Well, I think first thing we need to do is stop talking about the fuel shortage on the TV and in the press. If that stopped today, tonight, I think tomorrow would calm down. But the bit with the government talking about 5,000 drivers getting special visas won't really scratch the surface. The UK infrastructure for drivers is not a pleasant one. Our facilities are very poor compared to Europe. There's a European-wide shortage of drivers. So an Eastern European driver should just go to Germany or France or somewhere, not come into England. If they come to England in a hurry to take up these 5,000 spaces, they've got to find somewhere to live, rent a place, pay all their taxes and etc., get a job, and then be out of the country by Christmas Eve. It's not attractive. That won't attract a foreign European driver at all. I don't feel.
Stuart Ring, thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you.